Review! Despite his cruddy job and dim social life, Steve turns down an offer to develop a video game for Fazbear Entertainment. But a brief stint with a beautiful woman leads to him waking up apparently having missed years of his life. Now he's married to this woman and they have children together with a nice house. With financial troubles on the horizon, he finally accepts the offer to work on the game. But things aren't as they seem, as he finds he's trapped in a nightmarish prison within his own home. Oh, what the hell was this one? You'd think it's supposed to tie in with the actual Five Nights at Freddy's game Help Wanted, and yeah, I don't blame you, but beyond references to a rogue indie developer, there's really no more solid connection beyond that. To be honest with you, this story feels more like some kind of allegory for Scott Cawthon's own journey as a game developer. Let me explain. There's a reference to a game that Steve developed in his past that features a chipmunk that's suspiciously similar to a game that Scott Cawthon developed in his past. Steve worked on family-friendly games before making the jump to horror, just like Scott Cawthon. And Steve is also being held against his will and forced to develop games by the insatiable, ravening Fazbear entity. Just like Scott Cawthon. Oh my fucking god! But I haven't even talked about the actual story. So yeah, Steve finds himself in this brand new home with a beautiful wife and two beautiful kids, and the reason why he can't remember is because... Hold on, I actually have to look at my script. 1 second. Got into a car accident and received a head injury that makes his memory selectively go in and out and reset on occasion in the mornings. I've seen more sound medical evaluations in SpongeBob. This setup is already flimsy and contrived, compounded with the fact that Fazbear Entertainment is essentially tormenting Steve so he can get better inspiration for his game, with visions of spiders and snakes via illusion discs disguised as the smoke detectors in his house. You see what I mean when I talk about just how weird some of these stories are? Concepts on their own are almost never bad. Like, the concept of a man getting tormented by a corporation and inflicting him with nightmarish inspiration to craft the perfect horror game is not a bad concept. But it's the execution that fails. And the story as presented in Help Wanted, just not the optimal course of action. Why seek out this rando who didn't want to do it in the first place when there's about 1 million other hungry devs out there who would gladly do it, and probably for less? I mean, unless Fazbear Entertainment just enjoys the schadenfreude of it. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them, to be fair. I already forgot how to pronounce. Is it schadenfreude? 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 Hold on. Fuck this. I was about to say I hate the English language, but I don't think this word's even English. I think it sounds like German or something. Schadenfreude? Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude. Freude. It was kind of creepy when it was revealed that his wife and kids were actually robots, and they're wandering through the house, like calling his name and like lifting up furniture with inhuman strength. And then the voice in the radio that they've been hearing this whole time is actually like a person talking to him. Those are the most effective moments in the story. But otherwise, I wasn't a fan of Help Wanted. The setup was a mixed bag and the execution was fundamentally flawed. Maybe it could be seen as a humorous allegory for Scott Cawthon, but that's a stretch. Also, this. Sailor Thrift. Sailor Thrift. Is that a joke? Was that the joke? Is this like in those Nickelodeon sitcoms where they change one letter in a brand and all of a sudden it doesn't violate copyright?
Give me my Nintendo GS.
I can't with these books. I've talked about this story way too long. It does not deserve all this time. Next. Aiden and Jace believe a visit to Freddy's fortress, a maze of tubes and pipes in the Pizzaplex, is just what they need to forget about their troubles for a while. But a series of incidents, some accidental, some intentional, leave them separated from the main area, along with the maze's resident cleaner robot, Happs, who has just suffered a murderous defect. I actually kind of liked this story. It was straightforward horror. No convoluted backgrounds, no dubious lore connections, just two kids trapped in a maze with a killer robot. And all this is bolstered by the titular antagonist himself, Happs. The idea of a cleaner robot turning maniacal isn't anything revolutionary, but he was still an effective menace with a cool, simple design and a deliberately vague motivation. It's never made clear if the robot is truly vindictive or if he's really just suffering a horrible malfunction with fatal consequences. I like that they left that in the dark. The setting itself also works in the story's favor. It harkens back to some of the best parts of Security Breach, mainly the daycare section where the moon is stalking you through the playground. Also, I wonder if the physical similarities between the two were deliberate. My only big issue with the story was the inciting incident. When Aiden and Jace decide to play a prank on some kids in the fortress and scare them, I thought the idea was that Happs was going to start seeing them as a problem and go on a warpath to aim to correct the problem. But no, that's not what happens. Basically, Aiden freaks out on Happs because the robot thinks that they're lost and is trying to lead them out. And Aiden's all like, "Rah, I hate being told what to do," and he starts beating up Happs until the pipes get damaged, they collapse, and then they're all trapped. Like, I get that's a part of Aiden's character, but come on! Regardless, this was a good little story. The pros outweighed the cons, and it was refreshing, especially after so much convoluted nonsense in the stories before. Next. I will address you after the review. B7. After seeing his favorite Freddy's characters on television, Billy believes that he, too, is an animatronic, altering his behaviors and perceptions to fit this new view. As his parents humor his fantasies and time goes on, Billy begins to jeopardize his health and seek out quack surgical procedures to find his true self. But how far can Billy go before he realizes the extent of his transformation? And will it be too late? Holy fucking shit. The wheat among the Fazbook chaff has cropped up once more. In terms of sheer, tragic, visceral horror, B7 ranks up there with the likes of The Breaking Wheel. It's that good. Where do I even begin? First of all, the narrative voice. It utilizes like short, choppy sentences and repetitive language, just like how a child would perceive and relay things. The contrast between innocence and cold, painful reality in what Billy wants and how he interprets things is super well done. The pacing is good, the depictions of pain and mutilation hit hard, and there's just a darkness to the tone that really doesn't feel like it belongs in a Fazbook. The father leaves them, the mother completes the room temperature challenge by downing a bunch of pills in the bathtub. I really liked this Doc character who was like a shady, unlicensed physician, and even like the secondary protagonist, Malia, who shows up like 2/3 of the way through. She was surprisingly effective. And then the ending, when Billy finally realizes his humanity and he lets himself get crushed by a trash compactor in the junkyard, and the sight of his own blood finally makes him realize who he truly is. Oh my god. Seriously, where did this come from? It ranks right up there with the best of the Fazbear Frights, and is by far the best of the Tales of the Pizzaplex. There's really not much wrong with it. It's that good. Oh, wow. Anyway, let's move on to the epilogue. Yeah, okay, so in the epilogue, what happens is that there's... Okay. I'll address you. Happy now? Go away! So I never wanted to use this channel to discuss politics or social issues. I always intended it to be a fun place, able to be enjoyed by everyone without the risk of opinions or content that would threaten to divide down those lines. That said though, I feel I can't talk about B7 without addressing the controversy it sparked, because the issues surrounding that discourse, in my opinion, also reflect some issues surrounding writing as a craft in today's day and age. So here we go. Apparently when B7 came out, some readers saw some parallels between the story's narrative and anti-transgender rhetoric. They cite Billy's journey, the procedures he goes through, the events in his life, the tragic ending. They say that's similar to the transgender experience espoused by critics on the right side of the aisle who would tend to prop up like sensationalized and demonized versions of transgenderism. Reading the story, honestly, I could see where they were coming from. They didn't just pull this out of their asses. There do appear to be some parallels. And with transgender discourse, like front and center in today's day and age, with all extremes espoused by all sides, it makes total sense why someone would read this story and see it in this manner. That said though, however, that's the extent of credit I can give to those readers. There is a world of difference between a transgender person's experience and whatever the fuck Billy went through in B7. Billy dealt with a crisis of fundamental identity. His very humanity, his identity as a human being, a Homo sapiens, was the point of contention. He engaged in objectively self-destructive behaviors that clashed negatively with his essence as a human being. And the truth is, if you were to tell a horror story like this, where a person believes that they are something inhuman and goes to great lengths to achieve that affirmation, it would probably play out very similarly. An animal, an alien, a building, for Christ's sake. The unshakable mindset, the surgical procedures, the body horror, the clash between humanity and unattainable standards of physical affirmation. Identity and going to extreme lengths to achieve your true self are concepts that have been explored to their darkest depths well before B7. So, the way I see it, B7's only crime was coming out when it did, within the fandom it did. A fandom that has people who mean well, let's make no mistake, but who might be so impassioned that they might just see things that aren't really there. There's something kinda similar going on outside the FNAF fandom right now. Roald Dahl was an author active throughout the 20th century, responsible for classic tales such as James and the Giant Peach, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and Fantastic Mr. Fox. He is highly regarded, and his stories are considered indispensable staples for both children and adults. Now, in the current year, his stories are being workshopped and republished by so-called sensitivity readers, whose job it is to scour the text for language that is considered outdated or offensive. While this isn't the same thing as what happened with B7, the essence of the reactions to both works is fundamentally the same. In these cases, the story is judged not by what it's saying, but rather how it meshes with the zeitgeist, or rather, the spirit of the times. Right now, words like fat, crazy, even gendered terms like mother and father are seen by some as problematic, which is why Roald Dahl's works that contain those words are currently getting scrubbed. And with B7, the subject matter, the way the story plays out, and a number of unintentional parallels are seen by some as transphobic because right now, the temperature from all angles of transgender discourse is at a boiling point. It's important to recognize that social attitudes change over time, that what's seen as offensive now might not have been in the past, nor might it be in the future. If B7 were written 20 years ago, before transgender rhetoric was at the point it was today, I highly doubt anyone would have seen it as a critical allegory for transgenderism. Heck, I doubt it would have been seen as an allegory for anything beyond pre-existing themes of self-identity and change. But because of the spirit of the modern times, the story was seen as problematic and proof of some hidden bigotry expressed by the authors, which isn't the case, because even if all that I just said was bullshit, this here is a statement written by the story's co-author Andrea Wagoner. In a nutshell, she claims that there is no intent to be allegorical, that parallels between transgenderism never even occurred to her, and that the story is just a story. You can read the full statement in the description below. But what about Scott Cawthon? In Miss Wagner's statement, she claims that Scott Cawthon never intended throughout any of the Fazbear Frights or Tales of the Pizzaplex for any of his stories to be some sort of commentary on human identity or attributes. However, you might say, we know Scott Cawthon's politics, and we know that people on his side of the aisle would have sensationalized critical perspectives on transgenderism, so who's to say he didn't use this one story to sneak in some kind of commentary? Well, ignoring Miss Wagner's statements to the contrary, no one really knows. Not you, not myself, nor any of the millions of readers out there with their own takes on B7. Unless Scott Cawthon himself comes out and explicitly states his intent for the story, none of us will ever objectively know. Which brings me to comments like this. This comment is from a long Twitter thread where a reader lays out anti-trans parallels in the story they saw, also linked in the description, concluding that we, as in you and I, don't know Scott, and that we're letting our idealizations cloud our judgments. Well, that's true. We don't know Scott, and it might very well be possible that our idealizations of him are clouding our judgments. But aren't you doing the exact same thing in reverse? Are you not letting your demonization of the man cloud your judgment? You don't know him either, least of all his intent for the story. And the only proof that you have that Scott intended B7 to be some sort of allegory for transgenderism is a number of parallels that you saw in the story and the fact that he's conservative. If that's all you have, and especially considering the counter evidence, I'm sorry, that's some pretty weak sauce. And I'll end with this. If you truly want to make a point to be an ally and call out anti-trans rhetoric where you see it, I think there's a few more obvious places you could look, besides just random stories in subpar young adult horror fiction. You keep calling it out and making a fuss over things like that, no one's gonna take you seriously when you call it out for real. I truly hope this is the last time I have to talk about something like this. I do not like talking about politics or social issues. That's not the point of this channel. It's not fun for me. And God forbid, what if all I said causes a stir? So be it. My perspective's out there, and I believe I've been very fair, transparent, and nuanced in conveying it. Anyway, the epilogue. We have a new cast of kids this time. They break into the Pizzaplex that's still under construction. They find the room that was concreted off in the previous epilogue. They're trapped. They find the mutilated corpses of the construction workers who died there, and the burn trap / exoskeleton thing, I'm still not 100% sure what it is in there with them. I'm sure we'll find out more about it in another epilogue. And that's about it. Next time I'll be tackling somnophobia. See y'all next time.